Good morning, everyone. I am Shekinah Montesor, and together with Miss Rexelyn Tahan, we'll be talking about the types of deviation. So first, let us define deviation. So deviation in stylistics is concerned with the use of different styles from the expected norm of language used in a given genre of writing. It is a departure from what is taken as a common practice. So language deviation can be referred to an intentional selection or choice of language use outside the range of normal language. So language system is organized in an organic structure by rules, and it provides all the rules for its use, such as phonetic, grammatical, lexical, and etc. Thus, any piece of writing or material that has intentionally abandoned the rules of language in some way is said to have deviated. So that is deviation. Next. So these are the types of deviation. First is the lexical deviation. Second, the grammatical deviation. Third, the semantic deviation. Phonological deviation, graphological deviation, dialectical deviation, and deviation of registers. Deviation of registers, and the deviation of historical period. So I will be tackling about the first four types of deviation. These are the lexical, grammatical, phonological, and graphological. So semantic, dialectical, deviation of register, and deviation of historical period will be tackled by Miss Rexelyn Tahan. So first, let us talk about the lexical deviation. So lexical deviation is usually associated with neologism. So when we say neologism, that's it. So it is connected with neologism, which is misunderstood as a violation of lexical rule. So in neologism, there is an existing rule of word formation, the rules of word formation, that is applied with greater generality than is customary. So it is considered as general term rather than customary. So neologism, or the invention of new words, is one of the more obvious ways in which a literary writer may exceed the normal resources of the language. So the formation of new words is called nonce formation. So nonce formation, they are called nonce formation if they are made up for the nonce, for example, for a single occasion only, so rather than a serious attempts to augment the word stock for some new need. So literary man's lexical innovation can mostly be placed in a category of nonce formation. So example of this is the English rule of word formation permits the prefixation of for to a verb to convey the meaning beforehand, as in foresee, foretell, and foreknow. So example, in the literary piece of T.S. Eliot, his work The Waste Land, so he uses the verb forsuffer in the line, and I, Tiresias, have forsuffered all. This means a suffering beforehand. Before the success, before everything, he had suffered first. So Spencer's creations of new words like shaggy-birded, and Hopkins has the widow-making and shielding and unfathering. So these are an example of a for nonce, nonce formation. So another is the functional conversion. So functional conversion, this is a functional conversion can be I'm sorry, I've lost my wordings. Wait lang. So a functional conversion is a second example of a lexical deviation, which is it is a process of converting a word from one grammatical class to another. So example is, my heart in hiding steered for a bird, the achieve of the mastery of the thing. So it's like converting another phrase to form a meaning. That's it. So here in the writings of Hopkins, we take the word or the verb achieve and uses it as a noun. So in spite of the fact that English has already a noun, achievement derived from the verb, it is obvious that the word is a noun here because the preceding definite article, the of apparently beginning a post-modifying prepositional phrase, and the grammatical parallel with mastery. So that's it. Next is the grammatical deviation. So when we say grammatical deviation, so obvious as it is, it focuses on the use of grammar. So grammatical deviation is when a sentence or sentences break the rules of grammar. So grammatical errors, I think. So types of grammatical deviation. First is a morphological deviation. Second is the syntactic deviation. So let's first tackle about morphological deviation. So morphological deviation is an intentional deviation from the ordinary spelling, formation, construction, or application of words. So an example of morphological deviation is museum identical and intelligible in James Joyce Finnegan's Wake. So the entire book is written in a largely idiosyncratic language. So it consisting of a mixture of standard English lexical items and neologistic multilingual puns and portmanteau words. So when we say portmanteau, it is a word or combination. It is a combination of two or more words or morphemes and their definitions into one new word. So it's like creation of a new word using a two or more combined words. Next, the syntactic deviation. So when we say syntactic, it occurs when a writer deviates from the norms of syntax. It is a departure from the normal rules of grammar. So in syntax, deviations might be first, bad or incorrect grammar, and second is syntactic rearrangement or hyperbaton. So grammatical deviation indicates the social classes of speakers, the existence of differences in language between social classes. Grammatical deviation sometimes is a result of false analogy. So when we say false analogy, it is a term referring to a process of regularization which affects the exceptional forms in the grammar of language. So that's it. That is the grammatical deviation. Let's move on to the last deviation, which is the phonological deviation. So phonological deviation is a deviation in sound or pronunciation which is done deliberately in regard to preserving the rhyme, as when the noun wind is pronounced like the verb wind as a special pronunciation to make the convenience of the rhyming. This in other words, so according to Litch, phonological deviation is an irregularities of pronunciation. So phonology itself tackles on the pronunciation of the word, of the letters. So there is this irregularities or mispronunciations in the phonology. That's it. So The kinds of phonological deviation. So there are kinds of phonological deviation. First is aphesis. So aphesis is the omission of an initial part of a word or phrase. You can see in every poem or stories there is this omission of one word. For example, the word this. So in some poems or some literary pieces, the letter H is omitted. So it can be read as tis. That's it. That is aphesis. Second is syncope, the omission of a medial part. So example of this are near or power, where you can see that there is an omission of one letter in the middle part of the word. So aphesis in the initial part or the beginning, syncope in the middle part, and lastly the apicope. The apicope is the omission of a final part. So in aphesis, we omit one letter in the initial part or in the beginning, while in the syncope, we omit one letter on the middle. So in apicope, we omit one letter on the last part. Yet, when we omit one word, it does not change the meaning of that word. So that is the kinds of phonological deviation. And lastly, sorry, I forgot, the last deviation is graphological deviation. So when we say graphological deviation, oh, sorry, I still have another one. So, short stresses that the sound of language belongs to the speech. Since most of our literature is written, there would be relatively little scope for phonological deviation. So, the implicit sound pattern can always be made explicit in reading aloud. So to a large extent, this implicit phonology is determined by a choice of words and the structure of the syntactic level, where it can be regarded as an important ingredient of stylistic value. So it is worth mentioning that phonological deviation as phonetic behavior is determined by individual and a reasonable conformity to a serviceable norm and will function as a sort of standard is all speech community. So it shows a wide range of permissible variation in pronunciation and usage. So it is controlled partly by a literary norms and partly by the social sanction, though they have often abandon good local speech for something which is difficult to refer to a norm. So sometimes deviation is formed from the normal use of sound or the mispronunciation which have never been corrected, or they arise from a physical defect. So that is the phonological deviation. Next, so the graphological deviation. So to the extent that spelling represents pronunciation, any strangeness of pronunciation will be reflected by strangeness of written form. So graphological deviation, according to Lich, in a easier term, it is the strangeness of written form. So it relatively minor and superficial part of style concerning such matters like spelling, capitalization, punctuation, spacing, hyphenation, italicizing, and paraphrasing. So paragraphing rather. So it more focuses on the deviation in the physical appearance of the piece, of the literary piece. So example of this is Ariel to Miranda, take the slave of music for the sake of him who is the slave of thee. So that's it. We take note the spacing, the spelling of the words, the paragraphing. That's it. So that is graphological deviation. So these are the references where I get or took my report. So second part, thank you so much for listening. So second part will be the 4 other deviations will be tackled by Miss Rexalintan. Again, I am Shekinah Montessori, your reporter for today. Thank you so much.